And welcome back to the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I am your host, Anwar Richardson, with my main man, Ari Temkin. Make sure you guys do a couple of things. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate all the support that you guys are giving us for the past weeks, months, and everything. So please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Ari, the AP Top 25 just came out as we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, literally just a couple of minutes ago. Texas is ranked 15. They move up from 21st. Ari, just give me, first of all, your initial impressions on Texas moving up from 21 to 15 before we kind of get into all the other things of what the AP poll looks like.
And Louisiana dropped out of the top 25, yes?
Yes, Louisiana-Lafayette went bye-bye. After one of the things I read in the AP said after a decisive loss against Texas on the road.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm curious as to how Texas is able to move up so much, considering, you know, the team that they beat is now out of the top 25. But there was some pretty substantial losses. Number 20, Washington fell to FCS Montana. So obviously, you know, that's where one of the teams drops. And just trying to think off the top of my head. So, I mean, of who else might have lost that might have been in that category. I think 8 ranked teams overall lost the first week of the poll. So, you know, look, I think we were cautiously optimistic before the season started about how this team could look. But as you've talked about throughout this week, there's some PTSD when it comes to this football team. And Anwar, I mean, that goes back before, you know, Herman and Charlie Strong at the end of the Mac Brown era. There was just this, you know, this constant drama that surrounded this program. And so the first week of the season, it's like, wow, this is how normal football programs function. Wasn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So look, I do think that they beat a legitimate team, a really good defensive team with veterans back after last season. So I'm not going to poo-poo the win, a 20-point win, decisive win. So yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously with good reason this team should be a top 15 team.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ari. You know, it's easy to look now and say, oh, well, they beat Louisiana. And I've heard people say, like, well, they're just a Sun Belt team. I was like, no one was saying that beforehand, right? No one was like, it's just Louisiana, it's just a Sun Belt team. I think Texas did a good job of making them look like Louisiana and making them look like a Sun Belt team. I think that, to me, is the key. That was a good team that they beat. That's a good team that they knocked off. And that was a good team that they decisively defeated pretty much and handled from start to finish. And by the second half, when you're able to get to a point where you can put your backup quarterback in the third quarter and let that guy play for the third quarter and the fourth quarter, you're doing something, right? And one of the things Steve Sarkisian even talked about is kind of leaned on, you know, the days when he was in Bama. He talked about, you know, Tua and of course, having the other, my gosh, was my man in Philadelphia that Jalen Hurts, my goodness. My main man, Jalen Hurts, who I remember seeing here at UT under the lights like years ago, and I thought he was a stud at that point. But he talked about playing those guys at Bama and giving those guys a little bit of run and how that helps them down the line, and that's what he's doing with Casey Thompson. So, you know, I'm with you. I thought the defense played extremely well. I thought the offense played well. We know Bijan is looking good. I mean, I guess you got to tell me, Ari, when you're hosting your show on SiriusXM, how much Heisman talk is Bijan getting at the moment, or is that just more of a kind of like local centralized thing with a few outliers at the moment? I'm just kind of curious.
No, I think that's a good question. I mean, I've been talking about him, you know, both on Big 12 radio and ESPNU radio, really, and he was my offensive player of the year in the Big 12, not Spencer Rattler, it was Robinson, because I just thought the potential with him and Sark was just going to be incredible. And so I have mentioned him in conjunction with that, but I do think it's more localized. I mean, it's a couple of things. It's one, I think people not having a full understanding of how good he is. And then two, it's a quarterback award. And so, I mean, you have to, you know, it used to be if you were the leading rusher in college football, you had a good chance to get the award. And I think now you have to sort of be otherworldly. You have to be record setting at a running back position in order to get it. So obviously we saw a wide receiver win it last year. It's, you know, 9 times out of 10 a quarterback award. But I mean, look, if this is a guy that's, you know, he puts together 150, 200-yard rushing games, you know, consistently. We see a couple of those, and there are stretches here with teams they play where he could do that. Then I think you're going to start to hear some national love for it, especially given who's going to run away with the award at the quarterback position? So you have to sort of look at it in that landscape. But first of all, I don't think it's a weird discussion, an egregious discussion. I think it's legit. But I do think it's probably more localized in Austin and folks that cover the Big 12 in Texas.
Real quick before we go off that topic, who are your top three right now? I mean, it's only week one. I mean, it's so early. Man. But if you just had to give me your top three today, who are those guys?
Well, I mean, just going off of 1 week, Jack Cohn was unbelievable for Notre Dame and their win over Florida State, like 366 and 4 touchdowns. Who was, I mean, maybe Bijan in there too. I mean, Rattler did not. I don't think Spencer Rattler had a very good game, so it'd be hard to at this point. I'm almost overlooking him. Oh, how about Bryce Young? 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I guess I'll keep Rattler in there because I can't think of a fourth. So
okay. So let me ask you this: Texas goes from 21 to go to 15, right, Ari? And now, I mean, Texas always has a target on its back, right? So that's never a new thing. But now there's a Texas team that's ranked that will go on the road against Arkansas. For you, do you have any questions on how this team handles success? Like, is there a question mark for you that says, all right, you guys went out, had a great win, but you got to go on the road, but you're feeling yourself. You're a top 15 team. Everyone's talking about you. You're toast of the town. Is there any question in your mind about, hey, I want to see how this team handles a little bit of success right now?
Absolutely. I mean, and Anwar, you know this from having been in Austin as long as you have, and this dates back to the end of the Mac Brown era when I was in Austin. And, back then the conversations were, they're not winning because they're entitled. There's a sense of entitlement here that these kids have accomplished something that Vince Young and Michael Griffith and, Aaron Ross, that those guys accomplished. And you haven't accomplished anything. And yet you've got guys wearing the Longhorn jersey and the Longhorn helmet that think that they've accomplished these things. And that narrative has persisted. I mean, it's persisted through the end of the Mac Brown era into Charlie Strong and then Tom Herman. So and I'm not, look, I don't know that that's completely false, right? There's probably some truth in that. I also don't know that it completely is accurate too. So I do think how you handle success, and it's not even an entitlement thing as much as it is a winning thing. I mean, it's just in football and sports in general are you able to handle success as well as anything? And look, this is a really good opportunity for this because they're going up against another Power 5 opponent, a former rival. It's going to be a raucous stadium. It's the first sold out, Razorback stadium since 2017. So, I mean, this is a team they should beat, but there's a lot in here that if they do overlook them, they could get beat. So I think it's a perfect opponent here to test that question, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one too, Ari, because, we've seen Texas, it's almost like something good happens and then something bad happens not too long later, and it's like, you've had the nice win and and like, for instance, even the Oklahoma win a couple of years ago against Kyler Murray. And then all of a sudden, like a couple of losses happened after that. And, they had to kind of almost backdoor their way to get into the Big 12 championship, that year. And a couple of things had to happen. I think Iowa State lost late. But I think they had lost to like Oklahoma State, I believe, not too long after the Oklahoma win. So if my old brain is remembering everything correctly, right, I might be just jumbling years, but I think I'm correct.
That sounds right. I don't really remember either, so I'll just say yes.
That's okay. Someone in the comments will let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they backdoored their way into that. And so this will be the first test. We hear about the buy-in that these guys have, and the one thing it's interesting about Sarkisian is that he doesn't seem to get too hype. And I think the players kind of feed off of that a little bit, because you understand, Ari, when you have coaches who are yelling and screaming this and that, when things go wrong, it's easy to tell that things are going wrong because they're not yelling and screaming, they're not hype anymore, and a little bit quiet. They're doing this, they're so despondent, and then the players like, oh man, we are screwed if coaches like that today. So but Sarkisian seems to be really, level. And the one thing I think might help them in practice this week, it's easy, Ari, to say, hey, do these type of things off of like faith, right? But when you've actually gone out and done it in a game, it's easy to come back on Monday and say, okay, this is the reason you need to do stuff, guys. And that's kind of when we talked to players on Monday, that was kind of there was even more of a buy-in because they believe it. They're like, yeah, these guys said it and it happened. Hell yeah, I'm going to keep doing it. So,
and Keandre Coburn, I mean, I know you talked to everybody in terms of players, but Keandre Coburn said the same thing to Serenity in Coburn's video. It's basically like, yeah, we always bought into these coaches. But yeah, I mean, it helps when, when they say something and you buy it and then it comes true. It only is going to, give you more and more buy-in. So the more they win, the more buy-in you get. Here, I wonder this though. Do you think that there's any residuals from this quarterback discussion? Do you think that there are still, I mean, how do you think Casey's handling this? Mm-hmm. Do you think he's still thinking about transferring? Are there people still in that locker room that are like Casey guys? Do you think that exists?
Now, I don't think the Casey guys exist to a large degree. I think Casey is handling it as well as can be and as well as expected. And he seems to be a guy that is showing up and doing all the right things. I haven't heard anything to the contrary to that. I'm sure in his mind after the season, because he's in the season now, so it makes no sense, right? So I'm sure in his mind after the season, I wouldn't be surprised, obviously, and I don't think anybody would be surprised if he's on the move, after the season. I'll be interested to see, he was able, Sarkisian was able to get Casey into the game and they had a decent lead and Casey was able to keep it going. I don't know. I don't love it, going forward. I would like to see Hudson get as many reps as possible. And maybe, this is a game where, look, if they win going away, sure, go ahead and put Casey in. But maybe this is a game that you keep Hudson in for majority. I still like him to get some more reps, especially because I think when you get into conference play, it's going to be a little bit harder to do that. But again, I get what Sarkisian's doing. I get the whole mindset behind it. But to me, I think it's put to rest. And I think Hudson Card, even if he struggles, I think we've got to factor into our head that he still is a redshirt freshman. And there's going to be a game or two that happens this year where he's going to have a couple of turnovers. He's going to have a couple of shaky moments. We're not going to expect him to be perfect, but I don't think when he has a shaky moment, that should be the time that Texas fans or even Casey Thompson should be thinking, now's the time that I come in. I think if Hudson's your guy, you've got to stay with him through the good and the bad in order for him to learn and grow. That's just my thought process on it.
Well, and let me say this too, because transferring is such a big part of college football now and college sports. And, when you talk to coaches, the big thing that I heard when it comes to, oh man, it's so tough now with the immediate eligibility to get guys to stay. And, and so there's those coaches, oh, what a tough part of my job now. But, but then there are others that are like, hey, if I've got a situation where I've got a lot of guys transferring, that's on me. Like that's on me and my coaching staff to understand what goes into that, what goes into those decisions and why is this person checking out. And so this is to me an incredible success of the Steve Sarkisian era early on. We know that they lack depth behind Hudson Card. So, heaven forbid something were to happen to him without Casey, they'd be in really big trouble because they wouldn't have anybody even close to competent enough to save them. So knowing that the way that Sark has gotten the buy-in from a guy like Casey Thompson to where, we haven't heard anything that says he's upset. Mm-hmm. We expected him to be upset given the circumstances, but he doesn't appear to be. That's a tremendous success. And I think and look, maybe 3 weeks from now, he's like, I'm going to transfer. I want to get a head start where I'm going to go transfer. But at least for now, this is a tremendous success early on in the Sark era of getting that buy-in and having him understand that hey, this is a benefit to you being here this year, even if you're not the starter.
To me, the parallel is Shane Buechele and Sam Mellinger. Shane Buechele lost his job to a younger guy, and he had to sit that year and support the younger guy. And then when the season was over, Shane was able to transfer to SMU, was able to have success at SMU, and now he's on the Chiefs practice squad, right? So that's how I look at Casey. I look at it as, okay, you support, you be there, because this is the other part of leadership, right? It's not always, am I playing? It's what do I do when I'm not playing? And then if you go ahead and you support Hudson, do what you need to do, no one will begrudge you. People to this day claim Shane Buechele as a Texas quarterback, all right? Because he did all the right things. He understood what he needed to do as a teammate. He helped Sam Ehlinger along. He was that support system. And then no one begrudged him when he went to SMU. Everyone understood the deal and how important that was to him to have a couple of more years to play. And so everyone enjoyed his success. And when Shane Buechele had success at SMU, Texas fans applauded him, and they still applaud him, and they still view him as a Longhorn. So I think if Casey takes that same approach, the way that Shane Buechele did, and he was able to see happen, then I think it'll work out for him. I think he still is loved by Texas fans. And I think he gets, at some point gets to move on and do everything that he wants to do in the college football realm. All right, let me ask you one more thing before we get out of here. In the AP Top 25, just two other things of note. Oklahoma moved down from 2 to 4 after that close win against Tulsa. And it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, was Iowa State at 7 previously, and now they're down at 9?
Yes.
So what do you think about those moves down? Do you think those are fair for both of those programs to take a little bit of a dent based off of those narrow wins?
So if I understand this correctly, it's Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4.
It is Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Oklahoma at 4, A&M at 5, and Clemson at 6.
Okay, yeah, because for some reason I was thinking, did Clemson move up with the loss?
Yeah, you got to score points to move up, don't you? At least score a touchdown.
Georgia didn't even offensively. Ohio State's interesting to me because they kind of had the same issue that Oklahoma did. Now, granted, it was Minnesota, not Tulane. Mm-hmm. So that kind of surprised me how Ohio State would jump ahead of Oklahoma, considering like they also gave up 31 points, or whatever it was, to Minnesota.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, I think there's a lot of questions now around Oklahoma. I mean, this was supposed to be a top 10 legitimate defense here. And so they give up, they were down 14-7 and then they went up huge on them. And it was like, okay, this is where they run away from them. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, how did Tulane get back in this football game? Yeah. Not great defense. And certainly the 2 turnovers from Spencer Rattler didn't help. But I mean, that when you look at week 1's outcomes, Oklahoma did not look anywhere near any of these other top teams. So I do sort of agree with it. I mean, I don't think they look anywhere near Georgia or Clemson or Alabama. I'm not sure about Ohio State yet, but I do like Ohio State to win big against Oregon this week. So, and then for Iowa State, and I know you've been talking about this, and like for some reason, these openers have just been a big struggle for them. Last year they lose to Louisiana, and then the year before that, they had to win in triple overtime against Northern Iowa. So this one was a little bit, easier for them to win and not have to go to triple overtime with them. But yeah, I mean, if you're a top 10 team and you are within a touchdown of a FCS opponent, probably should drop in the rankings a little bit.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, my closing thought, and I'll let you close it out, Ari. My thought on it is, not only do I 100% agree, I think, and I said this before, I think I said this in the Monday show, but I think if you're a Texas fan and you looked at those teams and everyone told you those teams are untouchable by you, you can't touch Oklahoma because Oklahoma's got Spencer Rattler, they got Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch has got a fantastic defense going, you won't be able to touch them. And then when someone told you won't be able to touch Iowa State because they've got all their guys coming back on offense, all their guys coming back on defense, Matt Campbell and all the amazing stuff that he does. I think if you're Texas fans, you look at that and say, all right, I understand these teams might get better as the year goes along, but so will the Longhorns. And then I think what you look at and said potentially like, okay, you had to settle for what maybe a third place finish. I think if you're Texas, you say, we'll see, because they may not be as great as everyone makes them out to be, and Texas might be a little bit better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. So I know it's week 1, and we already did overreaction Mondays, but I think if you're a Texas fan, you got to look at both of those programs and say, okay, well, if all of us are going to get better as the season goes along, this program may have a little bit of a higher upside because only one of these out of the three did what they were supposed to do. And really, we didn't expect them to do what they did against Louisiana to a certain degree. So you might say Texas exceeded some expectations. So it'll be interesting going forward. But if I'm a Texas fan, I look at it and say, all right, we'll see, because I'm not overwhelmingly impressed by the two teams that are supposed to be better than us.
No, you're right. I mean, there's no, like, you watch Georgia and that defensive line, and you're like, they've got game wreckers. Like, they've got NFL players along that defensive line that completely wreck your game. And I don't know that if I survey Iowa State or Oklahoma at this point in time, they have game wreckers. Like, we're used to Oklahoma having, legitimate game wreckers on the outside. And while they do have good pieces, I mean, Mario Williams is a really good player, but he's a true freshman. Marvin Mims, young player, really good, but is he on the level of CeeDee Lamb or Hollywood Brown was a couple of years ago? I don't think so. And then defensively, I mean, same thing. Do either of these teams have absolute game wreckers, guys that, you have to account for them, whether that be along your offensive front or whether that be in the back end of your defense? Good players. Greg Eisworth, really good player, really good players. I think you're right that when we talked about these teams prior to the season starting, I think we thought they were on another level. And after 1 week, I'd say they're probably not.
Yeah. All right. Hey, guys, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. The subscribe button will let you know when these videos are posted. So whether it's myself, Ari's going to do a breakdown this week when he's talked to someone from Arkansas, and he's going to give you the insight and what's going on that Arkansas thing, so you have some knowledge about that. Serenity, she's got all the interviews with all the athletes, all the players. We've got the modcast that's coming on Thursday, predictions that are coming on Friday. And if you hit that subscribe button, you won't miss a thing. You'll always know we'll have a live post-game show that'll be, and Catch will be back this Saturday. So a lot of things going on the channel. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll be back soon. But hey, Ari, thank you for joining me. I had a fantastic time, and we'll talk soon, guys. Take care.